On President Joe Biden's first day in office, one of the first things he did was to stop all deportations of immigrants who were illegally crossing over into the United States from its southern border with Mexico. Biden vowed to end the harsh practices under the previous Trump administration. He wanted his office to show compassion towards these people who were risking their lives to come to the United States in the hope of a brighter future for themselves and their children. For Biden, this was a matter of principle. He wanted to show the world that the United States was a humane nation. He firmly believed that part of the reason why he was elected was that the people were fed up of the punitive immigration practices under Donald Trump. But those early promises remain largely unfulfilled. Chaos has engulfed the Texas-Mexico border to the extent that it is now dashing Biden's re-election hopes. The number of people crossing over into the United States has reached record levels, more than 10,000 every single day, and that is more than double than what was seen in the Trump years. The asylum system is broken. Biden's immigration with compassion is just not working. In mid-January, in a dramatic turnaround, the president implored Congress to grant him powers to shut down the border so he could contain what is one of the largest uncontrolled immigration surges in American history. He even won a case in the Supreme Court against the state of Texas to reinstall border fences. So what has brought about this change of heart? Let's delve into Crux Decode. Some of the circumstances that have created this immigration crisis are out of Biden's control, like the collapse of Venezuela, a surge in immigration around the world, and the reluctance of Republicans to meet the president halfway on immigration. The Republican-controlled Congress has refused to provide resources. It has openly defied federal officials who are charged with maintaining security along the 2,000-mile US-Mexico border. The result is a growing humanitarian crisis at the border, as well as in major cities around the US. Many voters now say that immigration is their top concern for 2024. They do not have confidence that Biden is the one to be addressing it. But Biden did not start this way. He tried creating legal pathways for migrants. He also began rebuilding the refugee system. He even embraced some of former President Donald Trump's more restrictive tactics. But those efforts were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of people who were arriving at the border every single day. Biden failed to appreciate the growing anger in both parties, both Republican and his own party, the Democrats. During the 2020 campaign, Biden had said that he would be an antidote to Trump's anti-immigrant approach. But he has presided over a fierce struggle both within the White House as well as across the country. There are people who favor more enforcement, and then there are those who are wanting to be more welcoming. That debate, both in the White House as well as across the country, has shifted the mood and the sentiment on immigration. Add to that years of inflation, economic suffering, and political paralysis, the public in the US is divided on whether the country, which is home to the largest number of immigrants in the world, more than any other nation on the planet, should absorb more immigrants. It all started from when children from Central America started crossing over by thousands in early 2021. The sight of thousands of migrant children jammed into crowded border detention facilities, that was not what most people imagined under a Biden presidency. Many of these kids ended up in jail or in broken refugee homes. It was the first big test of Biden's immigration agenda and whether or not this more welcoming approach would work. Well, the fact is, it did not. Republicans seized upon that opportunity. They declared Biden's immigration overhaul dead on arrival. They also warned that human traffickers and smugglers would funnel migrants into America with false promises, saying that the new president was throwing open the borders. Some of that turned out to be true. Republicans in Washington largely ignored Biden's overtures to come to the negotiating table and fix the immigration system. And out in the countryside, Republicans were thwarting his immigration plans with something innovative. It happened during a news conference in April of 2022. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas vowed to take the border to the president if the president didn't come to the border. His plan was to take thousands of newly crossed over immigrants in buses to cities like New York, Washington, and Los Angeles, which of course are controlled by Democrats. It was a stunt, but it worked. Buses arrived in downtown Los Angeles back in mid-June. They dropped off migrants in front of the house of Vice President Kamala Harris. And then Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida sent a plane load of people to Martha's Vineyard, which is a vacation getaway for liberal elites. Buses streamed into New York City. Democratic leaders in these cities were overwhelmed. They called for the president to step in, saying that this influx of immigrants was a huge drain on their resources. New York Mayor Eric Adams said that without a federal bailout and a clampdown at the border, migration would destroy New York City. The people demanding border security were no longer just Republicans like Trump. They were members of Biden's own party. The administration scrambled to meet some of these pressing demands. They came up with more money and speeding up work permits, but the busing of migrants clearly shifted the narrative around immigration. And polling began to show that there was growing support for increased border measures, which were once denounced by the Democrats and championed by the Republicans. But America's labor problem is not going to go away. As the working population ages and its economy grows at a pretty healthy clip, it needs more and more skilled young workers. It's a problem that America Inc. is quick to recognize and voice out loud. Back in August, the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in America, including Pfizer, BlackRock, and Citigroup, signed an open letter to President Biden. They wanted him to expedite work permits for those who had entered the country illegally. This was their way of making immigration work, but they were hoping to substitute an aging worker population with a younger immigrant one. A working population that is so desperate that they will go to any length and work for any amount of pay to be able to stay and work in the United States. Due to their low levels of education and skills, most of these new migrants are seeking jobs, low-level jobs in fields like construction, road building, food services and restaurants, retail sales. These are jobs that are already being performed by citizens as well as legal immigrants into the US. It is these American workers who do not have a college degree who often find themselves increasingly being pushed out of the labor force. The labor force participation rate has been gradually declining since the mid-1960s, and that coincides with the passage of the Immigration Reform Act of 1965. And it is these blue-collar voters who are now forming a bulk of Trump's MAGA base. At the other end of this labor pyramid is highly qualified tech talent who are legal immigrants, but they too have to wait for years on end to get permanent residency and work permit in the US. Despite soaring demand from high-tech businesses, there is an annual limit of under 150,000 on employment-based green cards. A green card is what allows you to live and work in the United States. That limit had been fixed since 1990 and it's not been changed in the last 30 years. Also, a study published by the Kauffman Foundation found that there were more than 1 million highly skilled immigrants and their family members who were languishing, waiting for green cards, having applied sometime in the late 90s and early 2000s. On the other hand, temporary visas for immigrants with special skills, known as the H-1B visas, are limited at 65,000 a year, plus there's another additional 20,000 visas for immigrants who earn advanced academic degrees in the United States. That too is too small a number to address America's growing critical labor shortage. There is only one answer to this: comprehensive immigration reform. And that is a bullet neither party is willing to buy.